We had an issue yesterday of our stream, our New Year's Eve destruction stream. It didn't. We had recorded it on Great Millstone in Dallas Reincarnated, and for some reason it's not there. So I guess it was what it was. What it was.
What took that?
I'm going to send this out real quick. In this so-called New Year's Day. Hey man, hey, Shalom Akim, Shalom. You know, first off, we want to say call halal Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shah, by Hashem, Makar HaKadash. We want to send double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim out there pushing the word to Syrian truth. And the brother Ariala. And, you know, I'm here with the brother from London, Wakwari Kwam. You know, I see the brother asking. And, you know, the brother had hit me up, and we've been discussing this topic. For how long have we been discussing this topic now?
Just about a week.
About a week now. And it's a good topic. And he sent me a lot of articles and information and brainstorming. I wanted to talk about the economics of slavery and the mindset behind it, and you know, the nature of this captivity and our captivity here in America, you know, and its importance to the enrichment of this place as a business, and just the practical concepts, you know, and really discuss that in the scripture, and just so brothers understand labor in general. You know, we read about these things, and because a lot of the labor we're gonna have even in our kingdom is gonna come from human resources, and it's a benefit to be able to have a human working for you. You know what I mean? Did you have any other opening words, Ak?
Yeah, Khan, exactly that, man. I mean, we're just gonna go into the topic, and Lord will, it will be edifying, and we can pick out bits of information and look at it from a point of view that maybe we haven't looked at it from before. Because when you're in the world, you know, the viewpoint of slavery, you know, it comes from a very emotional place. But hopefully what we're going to do today is try and look at it from a more practical point of view, and look at what Esau, you know, was basically doing and how he profited from it. And it's very practical, and he was able to do it to the fullest level of his efficiency because of his hate and his envy and his jealousy he had for us. He was able to treat us like, you know, with no regard, just pure cold business venture. And that's how he was able to completely maximize, and that's a word they use in business. When you study business, they talk about profit maximization, and they always tell you that profit maximization is at odds with what? Business ethics. That's your compassion. I mean, you can have slaves, but you can also have compassion. You don't have to maximize your profit, but that's why Esau is where he is today, and he's head and shoulders in terms of wealth and resource and power. He's infinitely more powerful, more rich, more wealthy than any other people, especially our people, especially Jake. He's infinitely more rich and powerful than we are because he maximized the captives. Okay, so hopefully we're gonna go into that. The brother's got article, and we're gonna just lead it from there.
I'm gonna share my screen. I want to read a scripture, and brothers, let me know if y'all can see this. Okay. And I want to read this here in the book of Revelation, because we talked about how slavery is big business, you know. When you go and read about Babylon the Great in the book of Revelation 18, and you go down to the 12th verse, it talks about the merchandise of Babylon the Great. And it says the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all the thyine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointment and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. All right, these are all parts of the big business of Babylon the Great, the big business of America, man. And a key ingredient is slaves, is having human work, man, because you get great gain by having somebody do the work for you. You have time to think, you have time to enterprise, you have time to sit on your bed and create more devices. And for Esau, the so-called white man, it's more devices of evil and corruption and of wicked control. Okay.
Can't even you can get your slaves to think for you too.
That's right.
Like all them inventions that Jake came up with, which Esau's benefiting from.
That's right. I mean, a lot of the inventions that were created came out of the South, came out of slaves trying to figure out how to make things go quicker, faster, easier. Why? Because they were the ones out there grinding.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So it goes hand in hand. That's good. The brother posted this on the comment board because I was going to get it. The kingdom is within, put Genesis 27:41, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. And it's all about property rights, man. When you look into the blessing, you look into the promise, it's all about legacy, property rights, and access to control. So, with that understanding, that we see how Esau is operating now. Your access to ownership is extremely difficult in this captivity, and that's by design. All right. Did you have anything out?
I just, since you mentioned the blessing, I just wanted to read it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because within the blessing it contains servitude, having servants. So Genesis the 27th chapter, right? Genesis 27 and 28. It says, "Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine." All right, so that's the land, the resources. It says, "Let people serve thee." Okay, and like the elder's gonna go into, when you have people serving you, that means those people are giving you their time towards your purpose. Okay, now you Jake think that when you go to work, you're doing something for yourself. No, you're not.
Mm-mm.
In America, there's no Jake that's really doing anything for themselves. Everything you're doing, guaranteed, is benefiting Esau more than it benefits you. Even if you own your own business, your
Yep.
business is part of his economy.
Yep. It's a part of his overall enterprise. You're building up his overall enterprise. You're providing product or service within his enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got a 9 to 5 job where you getting paid an hourly wage, basically you're getting paid for your time. The most valuable thing you have is your time. All right. That way Esau can do what he wants to do, because you at work doing it for him. You're building up his asset.
Yep, his new world order. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, "Let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee." All right. So part of our blessing is to have servants. A lot of our people, when the idea of having servants, they've been taught by Esau that it's something evil and crazy. No, what Esau did was without compassion and evil, and it was out of order because we're the rightful rulers. But servitude itself has existed throughout the ages, and it's a part of any economy. You need service, you need servants. Work has to be done. Okay, and part of our blessings is to have these servants to do this work: hewers of wood, drawers of water. Okay,
Matter
and
of
then
fact,
else we require. Like Solomon had the men from the Hamites that were he was wood and different artisans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, let's read a little bit of that real quick, and then we'll get into this article.
Can't.
This is Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1. It says, I said in mine heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. Did he physically do that? No. I made me gardens and orchards. I planted trees in them all kinds of fruits. I made me pools of water to water therewith the wood and bring it forth trees. I got me servants and maidens and had servants born in my house. Also, I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I got me men singers and women singers and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And the whole point of that, man, is you gotta have a thriving system in order to do that. You're gonna have to have servants. You're gonna have people working and building and toiling, and that's gonna be one of your chief resources, servants. And Esau knows this. That's why he wants you to be his property.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we was set to go to him for the want of all things.
Yep. We're not producers, which we're gonna get a clip on that. We aren't producers. We work for Esau for his production. That's how it is. That proves that we're still in captivity. We're not really doing anything for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we tried to do that, Black Wall Street, Esau's out now. We're gonna burn that down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a part of what we got going on. You can the way Esau sees it is you are what he needs. So if Esau needed a bunch of doctors, he don't mind giving you a doctor's degree if he needs you to do that. If he don't need you to do that, he ain't gonna let you get that. We're pretty much here to do. We're at the whim of Esau's economics, man. What he decides to do. So yeah, Ark, you want to go into that article right there?
Yeah, let's do it. This is an article that the brother Bakwasha from Houston had went into some time back, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. And the full article is excellent. I encourage you brothers to read it. It's here on pbs.org under their news hour section. The article is called America's First Big Business, Not the Railroads, but Slavery. And you brothers that are tuned in right now, if you don't mind, if you're on your laptop, if you're at home, you can go ahead and type this into Google and pull it up so you can read along. Okay. I'm gonna skip down. It says few topics have animated today's chattering classes more than capitalism. In the wake of the global economic crisis, the discussion has spanned political boundaries, with conservative newspapers in Britain and Germany running stories on the future of capitalism, and Korean Marxists analyzing its allegedly self-destructive tendencies. Pope Francis has made capitalism a central theme of his papacy, while the French economist Thomas Piketty attained rock star status with a 700-page book full of tables and statistics, and the succinct but decisively unsexy title, Capital in the 21st Century. With such contemporary drama, historians have taken notice. They observe quite rightly that the world we live in cannot be understood without coming to terms with the long history of capitalism. Nowhere is this scholarly trend more visible than in the United States. And no issue currently attracts more attention than the relationship between capitalism and slavery. All right. It says if capitalism, as many believe, is about wage labor, markets, contracts, and the rule of law, and most important, if it's based on the idea that markets naturally tend towards maximizing human freedom, then how do we understand slavery's role within it? You know, and when we talk about capitalism, you know, the right for what's called a free enterprise market, which everybody has the opportunities, what they say, to create their own asset or business, build that business and provide a service or provide a product. And in that market, if you have the right type of quality, if you have the right type of marketing, if you have the right type of you know, business and pricing, then you will thrive in that market. All right. And everybody has this free enterprise opportunity, so to speak. Okay. I don't know if you can Google free enterprise market and see what definition pops up. If you see anything interesting, I'll click over to your page and we'll read it. It says for far too long, many historians thought, huh?
Just free enterprise?
Yeah, a free enterprise, capitalism, something like that.
Yeah, it's free enterprise, an economic system in which a private business operates in competition and largely free of state control.
Boom. So that's what they say we have here in America. But how do you say that whenever in the only way that that system was created was by slave labor? Literally. The only reason why it thrived is because you had no labor costs. You had no that anybody that's on the business knows that the most expensive thing about owning a business is is paying the employees is always the most expensive thing. Beyond the equipment, beyond the, you know, usually it's the rent on the land, the property, and then the human resources, the most are the two top things. If you can eliminate those two things, you got free land that you took from the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got free labor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then your business is going to thrive exponentially. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so going back to the article, it says, for too long, many historians saw no problem in the opposition between capitalism and slavery. They depicted the history of American capitalism without slavery and slavery as quintessentially non-capitalist. Instead of analyzing it as the modern institution that it was, they described it as a pre-modern, cruel, but marginal to the larger history of capitalist modernity, an unproductive system that retarded economic growth, an artifact of an earlier world. Slavery was a Southern pathology invested in mastery for mastery's sake, right? Supported by fanatics and finally removed from the world stage by a costly and bloody war. See, this is what they want you. This is what they tell you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, it's the foundation to all the major institutions that have enriched America, from its banks to its universities to, you know, all the other major corporate 500 companies, the Fortune 500 companies that basically ruled the not just the American market but the global markets. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna get down to the good stuff. All right, it says for the first half of the 19th century, slavery was central to the American economy. The South was an economically dynamic part of the nation for its white citizens. Its products not only established the United States' position in the global economy, but also created markets for agricultural and industrial goods grown and manufactured in New England and in the mid-Atlantic states. More than half of the nation's exports in the first 6 decades of the 19th century consisted of raw cotton, almost all of it grown by slaves. Though industry in the North expanded rapidly, especially after the 1830s, enslaved Americans continued to produce a significant share of the nation's output. In an important book, River of Dark Dreams, Slavery and the empire in the Cotton Kingdom, Johnson observes that steam engines were more prevalent on the Mississippi River than in the New England countryside, a telling detail that testifies to the modernity of slavery. Johnson sees slavery not just as an integral part of American capitalism, but as its very essence. To slavery, a correspondent from Savannah noted in the publication Southern Cultivator, does this country largely, very largely, owe its greatness in commerce, manufacturers, and its general prosperity? All right. So it's basically saying this country owes its greatness in commerce, manufacturers, and general prosperity to slavery.
Khan.
It's what drove this place to its current markets. Do you have something up?
Yeah, Khan. I got a couple things here. You know, which all this played into prophecy because um just want to get a preset real quick. Ezekiel. First of all, they captured the land from the Native American Indians, all the good arable land that you could grow on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just want to get two scriptures here and an article. Yeah. So this is Ezekiel 7:24. It says, "Wherefore I will bring the worst of the heathen, and they shall possess their houses, and I will also make the pomp of the strong to cease, and their holy places shall be defiled." Now the worst of the heathen represents Esau, and Esau, he went over to the Americas, but not just the Americas. He also went to where we were in West Africa. You got Ghana and these places. Ghana is known as the Gold Coast. So when he was over there, he didn't just get slaves from Ghana. He got the gold, you know, all them precious metals that was over there. He was getting rubber and all kind of resources he was pulling out of the lands that he got in Africa. Don't forget you had the East India Company that was going over and pillaging and stealing over there. And then
Mm-hmm.
some were bringing all this wealth and resources back to Europe, and then they were spending it. So when they were spending the money, they were spending the money on what? Clothes, sugar. All right. So that goes back into, where's this BBC article? Right. That's why Britain is one of the richest countries in the world, and there's a lot of rich Edomites in Britain, and they were all former plantation owners or someone closely involved in that economy. I don't. Are you sharing it, my screen, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I got this article. Oh, wait. Is this the right one? Hold on. There we go. European profits, and this is going to link in with the cotton. It says much of the social life of Western Europe in the 18th century depended on the products of slave labor. Okay. In homes and coffee houses, people met over coffee, chocolate, or tea sweetened with Caribbean sugar. All right. So that's why those so many slaves were taken over to the West Indies, because that's a labor intensive crop. Okay. And they were working Benjamin over there to the bone. In fact, it was on the slave plantations in the West Indies that they invented shift work.
Mm.
Shift work was actually invented on them plantations because when they wanted to harvest the sugar 24/7 to reduce the loss of crop. Because I believe it's something to do with you got to pick the crop within a certain amount of time, or you're gonna get a certain amount of loss. So they would have the slaves working shifts, 12-hour shifts each, or more. Like I said, they're all about maximizing productivity, so they'll use you to the bone.
Yeah.
You know, so they invented that night shift. You guys doing night shift today? That goes back to the West Indies, 24 hours. All right, so they were selling that sugar, and that was when sugar was like crack cocaine.
Hmm.
Okay, before that you had to use honey, which you can't get it like that, or sweet or fruit. It says they wore clothes made from American cotton. So that's your southern states, and that was mainly in the southern states. And at first, they obviously at first you only had certain, because of the type of cotton they had at first, because you got different types of cotton. The first type of cotton they used to grow could only grow in a certain place in the south. So you only had a certain amount of plantations, which means you only needed a certain amount of slaves to maximize your production. And I believe what happened is there was not only the invention of the cotton gin, but they actually found a alternative form of cotton which was able to be grown throughout the South and the West. So what that did, I mean, I think I got a clip. Should we play the clip, Art?
Sure.
I think I got a clip on it.
Start with the internal slave trade.
See, this it's all practicalities, man. That goes into Deuteronomy 28:68. That's why so many of our people.
Yeah, so I had Deuteronomy 28 pull up. I see the brother also pulled up one part of the Deuteronomy 28. And the GMS Vegas sit downs by put Deuteronomy 28:33, the fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation with which thou knowest not eat up. And
Yep.
thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always.
And that's a key scripture for this whole series. That
Mm-hmm.
the whole, from then until now, it's all been about Esau doing his thing and using us.
That's right.
And that's it. We've never really been doing our thing. So we're still under that oppression, still under that captivity to this very day.
Mm-hmm. Esau will let you build something in this system. You can make some money, man.
Mm-hmm.
You can make millions and not sell out and not worship a Dagon, because it's all feeding into something anyway.
Yep, his economy.
But when you start to make moves to create a sovereign enterprise, a system kind of outside of what he owns, rules, and operates and controls, that's when he'll come kill you. He'll get rid of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep, they're the only ones that are allowed to operate with an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You Jakes ain't allowed to have your own private agenda.
That's right. And that's why this ministry is such a threat, because what we're doing essentially is teaching our people how to come back underneath a singular standard, a singular mindset and idea, and we're recapturing minds towards sovereignty with Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. Us as a nation, a nation, an independent nation, and how we have a constitution amongst each other, amongst ourselves through the scriptures. Now it could be better. Brothers could be, our mindsets could be better, and that does play into tithing and other things, But really, the key is this doctrine going out. That's the ultimate riches,
That's right, because it like the economy is everything. Like Neely Fuller was going into, economy is not just money.
That's right.
It's everything you do, and grouping together and organizing is part of the economy. And Esau does that. Esau is well organized, and he's been from the very beginning. They've always been looking at how can we do this better. What's going to be the best thing for us to do to maximize our profits as a nation, as a people? Where is Jake doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Where even these other nations, they'll actively come together and say, you know what, we're gonna send all our, like these Asians, these Elamites. They'll actively say, you know what, we're gonna send all our daughters and our sons to university, and they're gonna become pharmacists and GPs. That's something they actually sit down and organize together, and that's why you can't walk into a pharmacist anywhere and you don't see a bunch of Elamites, because they know how to organize themselves collectively to do what's beneficial for themselves. That's something that Jake can't do. The only thing Jake can organize is a party. A big party with coaches coming from every state and country. That's about it. This is as far as they go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll play this because I mean, if you want to go watch this whole video, It's called Slavery and the Southern Economy, and they bring out a lot of information just to show you how they were getting down. And that's why the South had so many slaves, because they had the land and the cotton, and they were making crazy money.
Now, the internal slave trade has everything to do with the crop differential in the South. In the upper South, the main crop is tobacco. And tobacco in the antebellum period is not selling as well as it had in previous centuries. As a result, people in the upper South, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Kentucky, they are in need of money. They need money to diversify their agriculture, to rotate their crops. They need money for fertilizer. In the deep South, they're mainly growing cotton, and cotton, for the most part, is selling very well. And as a result, they have capital. They have money to invest. They also have land that's available. But what they need in the deep South is additional slaves.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So then that opens up a market for Edomites to say, well, let's go get these slaves and sell them to these people. So you could make money with your ships, your merchant ships, bringing in slaves to feed that demand. It was a whole big economy. And let me just get Deuteronomy 28, 68 real quick. Deuteronomy 28 and 60. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, meaning save you. Because once they brought you over here to America and they began to use you as labor, they weren't ever going to let you go. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
They don't care.
I got a scripture real quick too.
Oh no.
See, verse 33, it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. You know, they refused to let them go, man. And just like just like the brother saying, man, it you know, somebody even put on the comment board, labor is wealth. It's a critical aspect of wealth creation. Labor. And if you can have free labor, oh man, you getting it. And that's what the Most High is getting with us. That's, you know, we were bought with a price to come out and do what? Serve what? This word, man. That's why Paul said he's a slave unto Yahushua. You know, this is the business of the ministry, this occupation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what's happening because of this, the labor that we're putting into this truth? Well, it's growing exponentially. The market is growing for what we got going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now somebody had put in, oh yeah, the kingdom is within. Put Joel 3:3, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this enterprise of capitalism is extremely important. It's extremely important. Okay, you want to go back on that?
Yeah, Khan.
All right, I got you.
So what we see in this time period, in the antebellum period, is a number of slaves from the upper South being sold to the lower South, or the deep South. And as a result, we see a lot of slave families split up at this time due to this increase in the sale of slaves from one region to another. Now, the capital, the money that the
let's get see, now, it's all business to Esau, but that's a curse. Where is it? Deuteronomy. Let me just get that real quick. Uh,
48 is good.
I was looking for the one where it says I shall look for them. Okay, we go. That's 141, and I also want to get
Yeah, 41. That's good too.
41 and 32. Okay, so Deuteronomy 20 and 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and an eye shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. And that
Mm.
happened to us. Okay, that happened to us, man. And that happened mainly in America. You're seeing it. You're seeing it, and it was all just economics to them. Yep, we need capital up here. These dudes need slaves down there. We'll sell the slaves down there.
Mm.
You know, take this child. Deuteronomy 20 and 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. Okay.
All right.
The Upper
Right.
South received from these slaves was very important. It allowed the Upper South to industrialize, now on a much more limited scale than New England, but industrialized nonetheless. It also allowed the Upper South to diversify its agriculture. They started planting more than just tobacco. They had a wider variety of crops.
And that's what you'll find, that the once they moved from this high plantation kind of economy, and the economy started evolving and growing into something else through the Industrial Revolution, where do you think the money and the capital that invested in the Industrial Revolution came from? They
Mm-hmm.
came from the wealth and the riches they developed through pillaging and murdering and stealing and enslaving
Mm.
people. And you can look it up. If you come here to England, you go throughout all these different towns and cities, the street names, buildings, they'll have certain names by certain so-called great men from that city or that place who helped build it up and built factories and all this crap. These guys were all slave owners, man. They all owned plantations in the West Indies.
Yep. Man,
And
Esau is very, very particular about that, man. Like, just from just personally, I grew up, you know, on my dad's side, they were my dad's parents, my grandparents, they were sharecroppers down in kind of south of where I live here in Dallas now, out in the country, small country town, and they worked. We lived on a cotton plantation. It was cotton and corn mostly. We also had a lot of green beans, like beans as well. But anyway, it was almost 200 acres of land, and the family that owned that land, when they were on their deathbeds, they didn't have children to will the land to. So they ended up willing the land over to my grandparents because they had grown real close with them over the time, and they all grew up there or whatever. And when that land was willed over to them, our name became hated in that city. You know, the other white kind of landowners that surrounded the areas hated my grandfather and our family, man. And so my dad and my uncles and aunts definitely grew up very protective. They taught us to watch out for certain things. There's places that we couldn't go just because of the hate. You know what I'm saying? And it shows you Esau knows about, land ownership and property and what you can do when you have those type of things. And if you come together and utilize it. But
yep,
because we've been broken, because we've been removed from having that sovereign type of mindset, we don't have people coming together. You got this thing with Tyler Perry owning this studio, I believe down in Atlanta. He's got this new studio that he just built, and it's not going to be long. In my opinion, you're going to start to see him be scandalized in the media. Esau don't like that. Look at Bill Cosby when he started to get ownership of NBC, and that's leading to this and that. Look Michael Jackson. They don't want you to have this type of stuff. They want it for themselves.
they'll find a way to take it.
They'll find a way to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Con.
And as a result of these changes to their economy in the Upper South, we see a decline in the support for slavery in the Upper South. Now, it's not to say everybody in Virginia suddenly became an abolitionist, but we see a lot less support in the Upper South during the antebellum period than we do in the Deep South, in places like Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida. Next, let's talk about the rise of the Cotton Kingdom, the importance of cotton. The map we see here is the region where we first see plantations in America, way back in the colonial period, 16 and 1700s. This region on the southern tip of South Carolina, on the along the coast with Georgia, is where we see the first American plantations growing rice and long staple cotton. Now, long staple cotton could only grow in this specific climate, but it had one big advantage. It had very few seeds and was very easy to clean. So for a long time, that was the only type of cotton that was grown in the United States until the invention of this, Eli Whitney's cotton gin, invented in 1793. Now, the cotton gin allowed anyone to clean cotton very, very quickly and very, very efficiently. So now farmers could grow short staple cotton, which can grow anywhere in the American South, from North Carolina to Texas. The only problem is it's very hard to clean. It has a lot of seeds. It was not grown widely before the invention of the cotton gin. But with the cotton gin, growing short staple cotton, which is harder to clean, is now profitable. Cotton production was profitable. It was profitable for small farmers who maybe owned less than 20 slaves.
I'm getting an echo.
Profitable for
an echo.
I'm getting a slight echo.
Maybe I gotta mute my mic.
Those farmers who owned large plantations, those people we call planters. Some of the advantages planters had was they often had enough money to own their own cotton gin. This kept their production costs low because they didn't have to rent the use of a cotton gin. They often owned the best lands, the most fertile farming lands, because they had the capital to purchase those best lands. And oftentimes the best lands were right on the river. And this is important too, because it kept their production costs lower. It was much easier for a planter to put his cotton onto the river and transport it to market than maybe that small farmer who's got to take.
What happened? Not? Is it buffering?
Right, Salaki. I was saying, which, that shows you, and that's still happening today with your big agro and all that business there. But it just shows you how the whole cotton industry was changed with that bit of technology. And the result was more slaves were needed in the South and throughout the South. So that's why when you look at the statistics for slavery, there were so many slaves in the southern parts of America because they had a lot of labor-intensive plantations, and the North, generally speaking, was more industrialized, so it was more machinery, so they needed less slaves. That doesn't mean they weren't racist. It had nothing to do with that. It's still cool. It's just they didn't need as many slaves. They didn't have the intensive need for slaves like they needed down south.
Yep.
And you understand this. It weren't because the people in the South were just that much more racist than the people in the North. They're all the same. If they could,
economics.
Yeah. If they could grow cotton up in the North, they would have been doing it too. You see? And that's why why they were making money. So do you want to go back over? I just wanted to bring that clip out.
Well, he made a point about cotton in Texas, and I think that's one of the things that people don't know about the Alamo, and about the Texas Revolution, and about the reason it was all economics. They paint this picture of Santa Anna as being some type of cruel person. The fact of the matter is that Mexico wasn't allowing for slavery, and it was a problem in Texas where you had so much opportunity to grow cotton. All right. I figured that out. I figured that out. I wasn't tripping on them. I wasn't tripping on them at all, man. You know, I saw that. We ain't worried about that. We're just gonna keep learning. All right. Check this out. This is an article. Can you see this article out?
Khan.
It's called History News Network. It's just an article, but it's good stuff. It says slavery and the myth of the Alamo, and I'm gonna read a little bit of it. It says there can be no doubt that the symbolism of the Alamo is at the center of the creation myth of Texas, that the state was forged out of a heroic struggle for freedom against a cruel Mexican dictator, Santa Anna. It represents to the southwest what the Statue of Liberty represents in the northwest, a satisfying confirmation of what we were supposedly about as a people. But if Northeasterners can be excused for embracing a somewhat fuzzy notion of abstract liberty, the symbolism of the Alamo has always been built upon historical myth. As the defenders of the Alamo were about to sacrifice their lives, other Texans were making clear the goals of the sacrifice at a constitutional convention for the new republic they hoped to create. In Section 9 of the General Provisions of the Constitution of the Republic of Texas, it is stated how the new republic would resolve their greatest problem under Mexican rule. All persons of color who were slaves for life previous to the immigration to Texas and who are now held in bondage shall remain in the like state of servitude. Congress shall pass no laws to prohibit immigrants from bringing their slaves into the republic with them and holding them by the same tenure by which such slaves were held in the United States. Nor shall Congress have power to emancipate slaves. So this was it within this Constitution for the Republic of Texas. Basically, they were writing it up to say, if you come to Texas with your slaves, they can remain slaves. They're not to be freed, because at this time it was still Mexico. It wasn't Texas. Under Mexican rule, slavery was abolished. It says Mexico had in fact abolished slavery in 1829, causing panic among the Texas slaveholders. Overwhelmingly immigrants from the south of the United States. They in turn sent Stephen Austin to Mexico City to complain. Austin was able to wrest from the Mexican authorities an exemption for the department. Texas was technically a department of the state of Calula y Tejas. It says that would allow the vile institution to continue, but it was an exemption reluctantly given, mainly because the authorities wanted to avoid rebellion in Texas when they already had problems in Yucatan and Guatemala. All of the leaders of Mexico, in itself only an independent country since 1821, were personally opposed to slavery, in part because of the influence of emissaries from the freed slave Republic of Haiti. Right? They're dealing with the Levites. This exemption was, in their minds, a temporary measure, and Texas slaveholders knew that. The legality of slavery had thus been a big, tenuous, and uncertain, at best tenuous and uncertain at a time when demand for cotton, the main slave-produced export, was accelerating on the international market. A central goal of independence would be to remove that uncertainty. The Mexican armies that entered the department to put down the rebellion had explicit orders to free any slaves they encountered, and so they did. The only person spared in the retaking of the Alamo was Joe, the personal slave of William Travis. Once the rebels succeeded in breaking Texas away from Mexico and establishing an independent republic, slavery took off as an institution. Between 1836 and 1840, the slave population doubled. It doubled again by 1845. It doubled still again by 1850. After the annexation by the United States, on the eve of the Civil War, which Texas would enter as a part of the Confederacy, there were 182,566 slaves, nearly 1/3 of the state's population.
So they were making money, man.
They would. eating, bro.
They didn't want that to stop. Yeah, boy.
So when you hear all these myths about the remember the Alamo and Jim Bowie, Stephen F. Austin, that's what that was about, man. That's what that was about. You know, it's
Wow.
all about economics and control for power, resources. You know, what
Wow.
you say, Ak?
Nah, it just shows you, man, how these devils will spin things, man. Because from me looking from the outside, I mean, I used to watch all them westerns
Mm-hmm.
and all that, and you'd never know that from watching these westerns. You know, man, that's crazy. See, so it's all deep economics, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Now, I want to read this part in this article because this is basically leading us up into the more modern times. You got to understand that these plantation and plantation owners, because they were making so much money, they were able to build massive enterprises. They were able to loan money to other people. They were able to start banks. They were able to start universities and institutions. They were able to do not just in America, worldwide, but worldwide. Okay. And hey, this is why the Most High, when you reading Micah and you reading Isaiah and you reading about how all the nations are gonna come to us, boy, we gonna be eating, bro. The tables are gonna turn. Now, going back to the original article I was reading about America's first big business being slavery, it says merchants in New York City, Boston, and elsewhere, like the Browns in cotton and the Taylors in sugar, organized the trade of slave-grown agricultural commodities, accumulating vast riches in the process. Sometimes the connections to slavery were indirect, but not always. By the 1840s, James Brown was sitting in his counting house in Lower Manhattan, hiring overseers for the slave plantations that his defaulting creditors had left to him. Since planters needed ever more funds to invest in land and labor, they drew on global capital markets. Without access to the resources of New York and London, the expansion of slave agriculture in the American South would have been all but impossible. Right?
Yep. And where was that money coming from? Like we said, at the same time, they were looting gold out of West Africa, jewels, and they were looting the planet. Let's not forget that at the same time all this was going on, they were making money in other enterprises all over the world, stealing and robbing. The silver from Argentina,
Mm-hmm.
they were making cake, man. Like I said, every now and again they find some ship that sank from way back,
Yeah.
and the value of the ship is in the billions of billions.
Yeah. You can see that in man, what is that show called? There's a show on Stars. I think it was on Stars. Was it called Black Flag? It might have been called Black Flag or something like that. But basically, it was showing those times where you had all these ships traveling within the Caribbean, Bahamas, and everything like that. Man, I would have to look it up. I would have to look Black something. Anyway.
Yep, and usually they start fighting over who owns a ship because it's worth so much money. And you got to think about it. That's one ship. So they were moving loads of gold and silver and all that all over the place. Some of it got lost in the sea, and they still was. This is what you understand. Esau was making money crazy out there, crazy before man, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm gonna read this.
Come on.
It says the profits accumulated through slave labor had a lasting impact. Both the Browns and the Taylors eventually moved out of the commodities trade into banking. The Browns created an institution that partially survives to this day as Brown Brothers, Harriman and Company, while Moses Taylor took charge of the precursor of Citibank. Come on now. Some of the 19th century's most important financiers, including the Barians and Rothschilds, were deeply involved in the Southern trade, and the profits they accumulated were eventually reinvested in other sectors of the global economy.
Mm-hmm.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
Going in, bro. Southern slavery was important to American capitalism in other ways as well. As management scholars and historians have discovered in recent years, the innovations in tabulating the cost and productivity of labor derived from the world of plantations. They were unusual work sites in that owners enjoyed nearly complete control over workers and were thus able to reinvest the labor process and the accounting for it, a power that no manufacturer enjoyed in the mid 19th century. Right? As management scholar Bill Cook and historian Catlin Rosenthal have shown, slave labor allowed the enslavers to experiment in novel ways with labor control. Edward E. Baptist, who has studied in great detail the work practices on plantations and emphasized their modernity in The Half has never been told, Slavery and the Making of Modern Capitalism, has gone so far as to argue that as new methods of labor management entered the repertoire of plantation owners, torture became widely accepted. Slave plantations, not railroads, were in fact America's first big business.
So this is where the hate and the that they had towards Jake comes into it, because you can use people as servants, but like even if you have animals, right? The scriptures say that you're supposed to take care of your beasts. You ain't even gonna treat your animal a certain way. You know, you have some compassion. Esau hate Jake so much, there was no compassion. So he was like, how do I get the most out of these Negroes? If I gotta torture them, then that's what I got to do.
Yep.
I don't care. And this is what you gotta understand. Like there's a practical sense to it, but then you got the hate and the evil, the
Yep.
cold-heartedness of these Edomite Christians. Gotta throw that out there.
Yeah.
You know, no compassion. It's just pure cold. You know, kill the Native American Indians, take their land and their resources, and get some free labor to work it. We gonna get rich.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
And can I show a quick I just want to show a quick stat that I found right here.
Okay, I got this one last part, and then that's it on this article.
Okay, yeah, go on,
We can just move on. This is the last part. It says, as profits accumulated in the cotton trade, in cotton manufacturing, and cotton growing, and in supplying southern markets, many cultural, social, and educational institutions benefited. Many cultural, social, and educational institutions benefited. Congregations, hospitals, universities. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these Mormon churches, the whole Church of Latter-day Saints, man, they benefited from slave labor. Okay. Craig Stephen Wilder has shown in Ebony and Ivy, Race, Slavery, and the Troubled History of America's Universities how Brown and Harvard universities, among others, drew donations from merchants involved in the slave trade, had cotton manufacturers on their boards, trained generations of Southern elites who returned home to a life of violent mastery, and played central roles in creating the ideological underpinning of slavery. Given that the United States in the first half of the 19th century was a society permeated by slavery and its earnings, it is hardly surprising that institutions that at first glance seemed far removed from the violence of plantation life came to be implicated in slavery as well.
Yeah, so it was a whole major economy, man, that all these Edomites have benefited from.
That's right.
All of them have benefited. And there's a precept on the common board from the brother from Vegas. Beautiful scripture, Psalm 73, 3-7. It says, for I was envious. In fact, let me get it up here. So that's a good precept.
I got Psalm 70. I got that pulled up because I was gonna read from that.
Okay, Khan, yeah, we could get that.
Psalm 73:3, it says, "For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. There are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence cover them as a garment." That's what we were just reading about. "Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily."
Right, and that comes from profit and surplus. Okay, I don't know if you guys ever played any games. Profit is addictive, man. When you get that surplus, Esau has more than what your heart could wish for, man. And that all goes back to all that killing and murdering they've been doing. And they set up a system to do that, and it just grew and went on from that.
That's right. That's right.
Their mindset towards you, Jake, is still the same to this very day. You're here to basically serve me and what I've been doing, and they don't care about you. They don't care about how you're doing. You think Volcam alone cares about the conditions that you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians are living in America? Because trust me, you're living in a way infinitely lower level than Esau's living on. These are facts, the statistical facts.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about that. They'll, which we're gonna get into this series. They'll talk about equality, but in reality, true equality comes with equality in resources and the power and authority, which we don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Bakwasha, man, was we use your article, man. The water, man. The water. If you want to call in, bro. But you was about to move on to the next point.
Yeah. Where was I? I wanted to show this, and see, statistics are powerful, man. Esau did all this wickedness. Now check this out. This is the world distribution of household wealth. Now, if you go into the Europe, forget about Jake that lives in Europe and the US, because you can look at those statistics individually and see that the disparity between you Jakes and Esau is dumb. Okay, I think Jake owns something like 0.5% of the wealth in America. The wealth and it's stupid. Okay, so when you see US and Canada, don't include you Jakes because you're not even significant. Yeah, same in Europe. Now, if you look at the red, that's the population. So you see Asia's like way up there for population. Then you get the dark green is the percentage of the world net worth. You see how high they are compared to their population, how Europe and America is. These Edomites are way and above everyone else. Asia looks like they're on the level, but look at their population.
Yeah.
So if you divide all wealth among these people in Asia, they're the same as Africa and the Middle East and everywhere else. Look at Europe and America. This is the profits from oppression, from slavery. Okay. Oh, that reminds me of the scripture, treasures of wickedness. Let's get that real quick. Micah 6:10, it says, "Are there yet the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the measure that is abominable? I count them pure with the wicked balances, and with the bag of deceitful weights. For the rich men thereof are full of violence, and the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth." Okay, and that's plain from the statistic. Okay, and all that began with slaying the natives of our people, getting that land over there in the Americas, and then using the so-called Negroes and so forth to work that land as free labor, and then later on, as it is to this day, cheap labor. Okay, and what you got to understand, which we're gonna get into with the civil, we're gonna move on to the civil war, is that by the time they've so-called freed the slaves, they've already set up a system where we were completely servile. So when you free someone and they don't really have nowhere to go, they don't have no resources to produce for themselves, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to come to you and work.
Yep.
Which is why everywhere where the slaves were freed, it doesn't matter whether it was Jamaica or Brazil, they ended up working on the same plantations for cheap wages. So what really changed? Whereas before you were forced to work, now you have to work because there's nothing else for you to do, because Esau owns and controls everything. All right. So we're gonna if you ain't got nothing to add on that, we can move on to this whole the North and the South, because you got this idea that Jake has, and we read it earlier, that no man shall save you, that Lincoln was some form of savior to the so-called Negroes, and the people of the South, they're just the biggest devils ever on the history of the planet. And the Edomites in the North, they love black people and they wanted to save them. And they actually marched and died to save black people, which is foolishness, absolute foolishness. But that's the confused state that our people are in. They don't know Esau is the good guy or the enemy. They're confused, and that's actually a tactic known as good cop, bad cop. Okay. Let me just read the technique. It's a psychological technique. Good cop, bad cop routine, also called Mutt and Jeff. Friend and foe. All right. It's a psychological tactic used in negotiation and interrogation. All right. It involves a team of two interrogators who take apparently opposing approaches to the subject. All right. And that's pretty much how this thing has been running ever since the Civil War, the whole Democrat Republican thing. It's a good cop, bad cop situation that Jake's caught in the middle of. And Jake is confused. He doesn't understand that both sides seek the same goal, which is your enslavement, your oppression. All right. It says that the bad cop talks an aggressive, negative stance towards the subject, making blatant accusations, derogatory comments. We know the routine. And then you got the good cop that appears to be what, sympathetic, supportive, understanding. Isn't that what Esau does? But at the end of the day, both these cops have one goal in mind. All right. So what I wanted to do is, I've got some information here, and this is quite a good presentation. And this guy's basically going to show you that Lincoln, he'd already written into the Constitution that the South could keep their slaves as property. All that stuff about Lincoln freed the slaves, it's all lies. He never intended to do any of that. All right. So I'm just gonna play this clip right here from about here.
The war was not over slavery. It was not an issue. Let me prove to you, just by two simple statements, I'll give you more, but let me prove to you that the war was not fought over slavery. And therefore, this flag could never, ever have represented slavery. You see?
Yeah, that's another thing, because Jake would praise the American flag, but they look down on the Confederate flag. And it's weird. It's weird. You'll have Jakes running down the streets with American flags wrapped around their bodies, crying. But when they see the Confederate flag, for them, that represents racism. Well, both flags are racist. You know, you were oppressed under both flags. But that's the confusion.
God.
Abraham Lincoln proposed a 13th Amendment to the Constitution. He proposed that 13th Amendment in March of 1861. Here was Abraham Lincoln's proposed 13th Amendment. Quote, "No amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give Congress the power to abolish or interfere within any state with the domestic institutions thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service by the laws of said state," end quote. Did you hear that? Lincoln's proposed 13th Amendment said Congress shall not have the power to interfere with any institutions within any state, including those held to labor or service by the laws of that state. In other words, what Abraham Lincoln was saying to the South, if you will accept this proposed 13th Amendment, you may forever keep slaves. Folks, Beauregard never fired on Fort Sumter until April the 9th. This was in March of 1861. If the war had been about slavery, and if the South wanted just to keep slaves and that was it, why fire a gun? Why fire a shot? Just simply accept this proposed 13th Amendment and it would all be over. Let me read to you. This resolution was passed unanimously by Congress on July the 23rd, 1861. You may read it for yourself in the congressional record. Here's what this resolution says. The war is waged by the government of the United States, not in the spirit of conquest or subjection, nor for the purpose of overthrowing or interfering with the rights or institutions of the states, but to defend and protect the Union. Congress said the war's not about slavery. Lincoln said the war's not about slavery. I will even give you a 13th Amendment that will allow you to make slavery permanent. You see, what was happening was this. There's a lot of issues, and I can't cover them all tonight. But one of the issues was an economic issue. Do you realize the South, before the war, was extremely wealthy? And the South, before the war, funded probably 75 to 80% of all the taxes. But the North wanted a 40% tariff. The South said no. The most we will ever agree to is a 10% tariff. And what Lincoln and the radical Republicans were doing was this. They were saying, we will give you the 13th Amendment. We will let you keep your slaves if that's what you want. You just let us keep our tariffs. In other words, the North was willing to sell the blacks out for money, for higher taxes. They weren't interested in the slaves. They could care less. You see, Hapgood's book, Abraham Lincoln, the Man of the People, on page 2.
So there you have it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it is. But our people are confused about that history. That's why when we told them that so-called white man's the devil, they're all confused. They're like, no, but there's some good ones. They don't understand. Esau doesn't care about you. The scriptures, if you understood the scriptures, what does it say? No, let's read it again. Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold to your enemies. Right? Both the north and the south were buying slaves. They're your enemies. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There was slavery in the north. There was segregation in the north. Everything, there was lynchings in the north. Like what more do you want to know? Right? Enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
No man shall buy you.
Okay, and again, as we read earlier, what was it? 40. Where was it?
What are you thinking about?
You know the scripture, shall only be oppressed. Get it real quick. Search real quick. There we go. Deuteronomy 28:29, and thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness. And that's our people. They have no idea what's going on. They don't, they have this day. Jake don't really know what's going on with the economy or anything like that. They don't know. They haven't really known for a very long time. That's why Jake has always been manipulated by politics and all this foolishness and the civil rights movement. They didn't even understand that. Jake has just been here getting taken advantage of, being preyed upon for all these years. But now, through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, we're gaining the understanding. We're seeing what's going on out here. We're understanding the wiles of the devil. We're understanding how Esau operates. We're understanding the standard that we should live by. The Lord has given us back wisdom. Jacob just been simple all these years, man. And Esau's just been laughing like at every turn. Esau's just been twisting Jacob into whatever shape he wants. Okay, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. Anytime Jake try and do something for themselves, it don't prosper. The only thing Jake can prosper in is when they're doing something for Esau. It's just the facts. It's part of the curses. And thou shalt be only oppressed. So you were oppressed prior to the Civil War, and you were oppressed after the Civil War, and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. That includes Lincoln. Okay.
Kind. And I have this little article on Lincoln.
I can't.
I'm gonna read it, just a little piece of it. Brother GMS Vegas sit downs Bob put if I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. Abraham, that's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Brother Kingdom from Within put Ezekiel 28:4, with thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten thee riches and hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. Yep. You know. Yep, destroy for lack of knowledge. That's right. Matter of fact, you know what? I'll get something after that. Let me share the screen real quick. All right, so it's called the Ghost Amendment. This is written back February 18, 2013. The Ghost Amendment that haunts Lincoln's legacy. I'm just going to get down to the point. But the 13th Amendment, we know now, differs substantially from the one first proposed. The initial amendment would have made slavery constitutional and permanent, and Lincoln supported it. This early version of the 13th Amendment, known as the Corwin Amendment, was proposed on December 1860 by William Seward, a senator from New York, who would later join Lincoln's cabinet as his first Secretary of State. The Corwin Amendment reads as follows: no amendment shall be made to the Constitution which will authorize or give to Congress power to abolish or interfere within any state with the domestic institution thereof, including that of persons held to labor or service by the laws of said state. The Corwin Amendment was an effort to placate the South and contain secessionist sentiment. It proposed to do three things. First, to protect slavery by giving each state the power to regulate the domestic institutions within its borders. This was an enticing carrot for the slave states. Stay in the Union and you can keep slavery. Second, to propose Congress to depossess Congress of the power to abolish or interfere with slavery. And third, to make itself unamendable by providing that no amendment shall be made to the Constitution that will undo the Corwin Amendment. After Seward proposed the Corwin Amendment, the newly elected President Lincoln defended the state's right to adopt it. In his first inaugural address, Lincoln declared that he had no objection to the Corwin Amendment, nor that it be made forever unamendable. The Corwin Amendment won 2/3 support in both the House and the Senate in early 1861. Ohio was the first state to ratify the amendment. Wow. The reason why I say wow to that, Ohio as a state is like heralded in the United States as one of the chief places where slaves could flee to and be protected. Like where you had a lot of runaway houses during the time of Harriet Tubman and all that. So held up as a abolition sentiment. But here it says Ohio was the first state to ratify the amendment and Maryland and Illinois followed suit. But the onset of the Civil War interrupted the state's ratification of the amendment. And that's where there was an argument between the taxation that was going to be happening to any goods and commodities that was, I guess, made by slave labor. And that led to war, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says, had it been ratified, however, the Corn Amendment would have become the 13th Amendment, forever protecting slavery against instead of abolishing it. And the amendment would have passed with the support of the men who later freed the slaves in the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, orchestrated the constitutional death of slavery, and is by any measure one of the history's greatest leaders. It says, although, let me see, that the Corn Amendment was approved in both and subsequently ratified by some states, reveals a deep flaw in the design of the United States Constitution. Although its ratification was disrupted by the Civil War, the Corn Amendment is not actually dead. To this day, it lies dormant, ready to be ratified by the required number of states. Its adoption by the House and Senate is now a constitutional fact that cannot be reversed. Even though it was last approved by a state in 1861, if another 35 states voted today to approve the Corn Amendment, or perhaps 36 since some dispute Illinois' ratification, blah, 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 there will be a genuine question of constitutional law whether it overruled the current 13. So, this is your boy Lincoln. This is your homie Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
What is he on, a $5 bill or something like that?
Satan.
That's your homie Lincoln, man.
Mm-hmm. They ain't ever done nothing for Jake, and hopefully we're showing you that, it's always been about their benefit. Yep. I got a precept here, Deuteronomy 28:48 says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in the want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And then so when you look at this want of all things, that's going into the production.
Mm-hmm.
You were brought over to America. You weren't brought over to be owners or to control any resource. And that's why to this very day, you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans don't actually control any industry in the world. You don't own or control any industry. That's what Kanye was crying about on the Breakfast Club.
Yep.
All right. You work in these industries. You don't own and control. You're not captains of industry. You have no power over those industries whatsoever. Some Edomites whose name you don't know owns and controls. You always, now and then you hear some family, some super powerful family that controls beef, or you know what I'm saying? Some crazy stuff like that, man. There ain't no Jakes like that. Okay, so that never changed after the Civil War. And going into the 40 acres of the mule, that was supposed to be a way in which Jake would basically receive resources and funding to basically do his own thing. But if you notice, they never did it. And you know why they never did it? Because that would mean that you Jakes wouldn't be there to be labor for them, because you would have a choice then. You would have a choice whether to work for Esau or work for yourselves. And that was never going to be an option for you. You're there as a labor source. Yeah. When you ain't got a job, who cares?
That's right.
Okay. When they got a job for you, then they got a job for you. They'll even train you to do the job. And that's exactly how it is. Now I got an article here.
Okay.
And it goes into the 40 acres and the mule, and it's very interesting. So it said 40 acres and a mule, a phrase echoed throughout the South in the aftermath of the Civil War, asserting the right of newly freed in brackets African Americans to redistributed land. particularly those plantations confiscated by the US troops during the war as compensation for unpaid labor during slavery. Many historians trace the phrase to General William T. Sherman's Special Field Order Number 15, issued on the 16th of January 1865, which set aside a 30-mile tract of land along South Carolina and Georgia coast for former slaves, and promised the Army's help securing loaned mules, which they were going off. If they were truly going to free the slaves and set them up, they shouldn't have loaned them anything. It should have been given. They should have been given land, mules, and capital. And that's what the Most High is going to give us. And Esau, you're the mule. The Most High is going to give us land, mule, which is you, and capital, which is the gold and the silver. And that's in the scriptures. Right? And that's how we're going to become sovereign. It says, in addition, the Freedmen's Bureau initially was authorized to divide abandoned and confiscated lands into 40-acre tracts of rental and eventual sale to refugees and former slaves. Now, hold on. So they weren't even planning on giving us 40 acres. They were planning on selling us 40 acres. Esau ain't right, man. So that dude was probably just trying to make some quick money for himself. Despite the efforts of radical Republicans during the Reconstruction period, however, significant land redistribution ultimately were abandoned, because back then the Republicans were supposedly the party for black people. Now it's the Democrats, but they're all devils. Come on. It says, however, significant land redistribution measures ultimately were abandoned and virtually all southern lands were returned to white owners. The resulting sharecropping system left the social and economic structures of slavery essentially intact in the South. So what does that say to you? Nothing changed. And it still hasn't changed to this very day. All right?
They covered fields.
Take them by force. They allow you Jakes to own and control anything because you're slaves. They don't mind you walking around and thinking you're free. That doesn't matter. In reality, does it really matter? When you're reaping all the benefits of mastery, does it matter if your slaves think they're slaves? It doesn't matter to you. You're still living the life you want to live. They're the ones living in the ghetto, thinking you can believe you're free if you want. Hell, you can even ride on our buses.
Yeah, here.
Whatever. So,
seat, nigga.
and that goes back into this precept here, Jeremiah 30:16. It says, therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, because we've been devoured and digested. And all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity. So the Lord's going to provide us with mules. Yeah, you Edomite vocab Malone, you're going to be a mule. Okay. And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. Because when we're going through this history, doesn't it sound to you that our people are a prey? Don't it sound to you like we're being exploited? Doesn't it look to you statistically, when you look at the statistics, don't you think you Jakes are still being exploited? And you think that's an accident? You think that's just happening by accident? No. Okay. And so we got Jeremiah 30:17, for I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord, because they call thee an outcast, saying, this is Zion, whom no man seeketh after. Okay, so no one cares.
That's right.
All right, it's the Lord that's gonna have to deliver us.
Yeah. So we'll come back into the state that the Most High is intending, and it takes us coming back into obedience. All this happened to us because we forgot, or we lost sight on, our power. So we was cast into the situation, and now we're seeing it. We're feeling it. I got a quick one. Did you still want to get that one video?
No, I might have to do that separately. I
Okay.
think I covered the topic.
Okay, cool. I got this real quick. Let me read it real quick. Isaiah 50:1. It says, "Thus said the Lord, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement, whom I have put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Behold, for your iniquities have ye sold yourselves, and for your transgressions is your mother put away. Wherefore, when I came, there was no man. When I called, there was none to answer. In my hand is my hand shortened at all, that it cannot redeem, or have I no power to deliver? Behold, at my rebuke I draw up the sea. I make up the rivers. I make the rivers a wilderness. The fish stinketh, because there is no water, and die for thirst." All right, and so the Most High has the power to basically flip the script, so to speak. We just have to wake up to what we're supposed to do. All right, and consider our ways amongst all these things that have befell us, man, have befallen us. Okay, Jeremiah, what is it? Jeremiah, is it 2? Is Israel homeborn slave? Or is that Isaiah? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know that one. That one's is
I think it's Jeremiah 2.
yeah.
Can't think of which where is that. Yeah, Jeremiah 2:14. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? You know, we gotta make sure that we're moving towards what? A kingdom mindset, that legacy mindset, the mindset of rulership, and us having the labor, us having the property rights. That's what the promise is. The promise is us coming into what? Ownership of property and land and riches and resources. You know, the fatness of the earth, so to speak. You know. Do you have anything else, Art?
No, that's pretty much it. I think we could wrap it up there and continue on. Lord willing, we gonna go into some more things dealing with the civil rights movement, the New Deal, and it just over the years Esau's come up with all these things, and Jake has believed it to be a promise of salvation or some alleviation from the oppression, but the actual facts of the matter is nothing's changed.
Yeah,
So the mirrors that we need salvation.
Con. And I think one of the things that brothers, somebody mentioned Pharaoh earlier in this broadcast. Moses sat in a high seat, with Pharaoh, and he made money, and you had other Israelites that were making, making moves in the Egyptian empire. But the fact of the matter is, we were still slaves within that system. Everything we were doing was to benefit this system. We were not sovereign. And that's why Moses had to say, "Let my people go." We were still captive in the Egyptian empire. And in like fashion, we are here today. There's this simulance of Jake prospering, but really you're just functioning within that ancient system or the American system today. Okay. I just wanted to say that, man. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got one more precept, man. One more precept. Jeremiah 13:8. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna be the, that boy, the boy basically.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
Con. You want to close us out with anything? Any words?
That's it. That's pretty much. Hopefully, brothers were edified, man, and they see it from from a more 360 point of view of what was going on back then. Esau was maximizing his profits, and he's still doing that today. Amazon. Well, you hear about what Amazon do with their workers. Esau's ruthless, man. Esau will have you training your replacement. Just get rid of you.
That's right.
So Esau's ruthless, man.
Got it, man. Yeah, we'll come back and visit this a little bit more. There's definitely a lot more than we had. I know you, bro. You sent me a lot to study.
Yeah, Khan, I just see you pulled up that article from Salon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had quite a few that I was reading on. Very good information. So we'll
yeah.
pass it on. I make it a table talk whenever I am talking to it. I got to go into these things. Make it uncomfortable.
That's right.
I enjoy it. We was at this one little networking event, and one of the people was like, I've seen you out protesting in Dallas. What was that all about? Oh, just talk about different issues, different things, rights for our people. These Edomites know, they know, man, they guilty, man.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I guess we'll close out, man. Love you, brothers, man. We're in the new so-called new year. Y'all see that Apostle Hart named it the year of prophecy. It's funny that came back around, and we definitely are seeing things heating up. I definitely exhort brothers to just stay the course. You have great leadership. Through the Spirit, leadership has been groomed all across the four corners of the earth. You got powerful men, brothers, not only across the United States, all across the world that have been groomed in the Spirit, and just keep fighting, man. Just keep fighting. If you don't know what to do, ask somebody. But focus on your gifts that's been given to you, and focus on your relationship with Yahweh Shem Yahushua, and bring it to the table within the ministry. So, you have any other closing words, Ak?
You said it all, brother.
Amen. Call halal Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua Ba'Shem Akal HaKadosh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutation to all y'all came out there pushing the word sincerity and truth, man. Shalom.
Shalom, Akim.